What does economic development have to do with IP transition? Well, it has a lot, it seems. Jessica, you just moderated a panel about economic development and the transitions that people are making. Why don't you kind of give us a brief summary and we'll go into some questions.
Sure. So a lot of the panel had to do with the troubles in financing and marketing your community and really being able to invest back into your community so you can have folks and businesses be attracted to not only stay within your community, but to be able to attract more folks to your community. And so what the panel focused on were the challenges of that, and the tools you can really invest in being able to achieve these end goals. And so what it has to do, I think, ultimately with this IP transition and the developing of technologies is that if a community is not having this discussion on or seeing themselves as a leader in this discussion on attracting businesses to their community, that at the end of the day they're not going to be on the same level as other folks. They're going to be falling behind without realizing it.
And one of the things that I really enjoyed about the panel was the variety of panelists you had.
Yes. So NTCA has really worked hard over the past few years in engaging multi-stakeholders. So we have folks from agriculture, healthcare, public safety, economic development. And at the end of the day, our message is that if we don't have one unified rural voice, that there's not going to be a real rural voice. And I think what Shirley Bloomfield has done at NTCA is led the initiative to make NTCA the leading voice in rural economic development, because broadband is economic development, and a lot of telcos don't always see broadband as economic development. So our challenge as an association is to help educate folks on how broadband is economic development. It touches rural education, rural healthcare, public safety, agriculture, and all of these incredible industries that make a vibrant rural community.
Well, and part and parcel with telecommunications, you need electricity to run it, and I thought it was interesting you had the Grand River fellow on there.
Yes, Tom Lambrecht is fantastic, and he's from Great River Energy in Minnesota, and one of the challenges we often hear about is working with your local electric, because there can be, whether it's an ego or bad history, that a lot of folks don't always work with their electrics, and sometimes it's just you don't think to do so, and at the end of the day, the more collaboration you have going on within your community, you have mutual interests. Both electrics and telcos want their communities to survive and thrive, and having Tom on the panel, I think, gave folks a better idea of what programs are out there that they could be taking advantage of, how they could be better working with their electrics, and how they could be thinking about economic development from another angle.
Well, what's interesting about his role is he is economic development for a greater electric co-op, right?
Exactly, and I think that's one of the challenges. So NREDA is the National Rural Economic Developers Association, and NTCA is a member of NREDA, as are the rural electrics. And Tom has been the president of NREDA in the past, and I think working together, we've kind of pushed that message forward via this Rural Economic Developers Association. But a lot of telcos don't have economic development staff on hand, and when we asked the audience who in here has economic developers on their staff, I think 5 or 6 people raised their hands, and it wasn't even on their staff, it was that it was a bullet point in their goals. So hopefully by the end of the session we've been able to achieve getting economic development on people's agendas for the next few years at least.
Well, and it was interesting to hear Keith from People's talk about the things they've done, especially with the telework and so forth.
Yes, and Keith is one of the biggest champions and advocates that we have, and he's the most humble man. He would never ever admit to this, but I called him up and asked to be on this panel, and he said, well, we've done some economic development stuff, I guess, but the more we started talking, he said, well, we've done this and this and this and this, and Keith's company, People's Rural Telephone in McKee, Kentucky, is one of our Smart Rural Community awardees. And that's an initiative that NTCA started up a few years ago to recognize rural communities that have gone above and beyond, not only to build their broadband network, but to collaborate within their community to take full advantage of the network. Again, with the school facilities and hospitals and so on.
Well, and you made the very important point in that regard, is that people in Washington often think rural is maybe 300,000 people. It's Louisville, Kentucky, right?
Exactly. It's rural image is a big problem we face, honestly, and it's something that we talk about constantly at NTCA. How do we start combating this image that rural America has? You have folks think, rural is either very poor and no one lives there, or it's very wealthy and this beautiful, picturesque lifestyle. And there's a lot of challenges that face rural communities, but how do we get the rural image out there that rural is innovative and forward-thinking and progressive, and there is a lot to be said about rural America.
And we heard, one of the name brands, lawnmowers, right? It's manufactured there. 2,500 people employed in this town of 4,000, and I know there's other examples of that I've discovered.
Oh, entirely. And when we talk about bringing manufacturing back to the U.S., rural America is the perfect place to start considering building manufacturing facilities and building IT jobs. And we've talked a lot about telework initiatives, and 100% of NTCA members offer broadband on some level or another. And so they are the ideal areas where folks could come back and actually build facilities and create jobs and help foster our economy moving forward.
Well, clearly what you're doing and what NTCA is important to making that bridge between rural and Washington.
We hope so. We hope so. Thank you so much.
Thanks.